The original Season 4, Episode 8, Voodoo in My Blood. I think this was a pretty good episode based on all the story elements that we got. We get the complete history of the Hollow, the birth, the physical death, I guess, of the actual person, and we find out where werewolves actually came from in the lore of the series. And I thought that was actually that was definitely my favorite part about that whole story. It was like these two clans come together, they bless the strongest witches in the clans bless this child. And then this child is basically, in an odd sense, this child is actually like a vampire of magic because it wants more and more power. So of course they have to end up killing the kid. The kid banishes them all, or well, doesn't banish them all, but curses them all because they use wolves to hunt her down. And so everyone, gets turned into werewolves. And I was like, that's a really cool way to do that. So we get the introduction to the werewolf curse. We find out, we already knew this because of the way they ended the last episode, but of course, Haley and Hope are the only two people, pretty much, period, that can actually help destroy the Hollow because they need their blood as well as an immortal sacrifice in order to officially take this thing down. So, really love the backstory that we got. We had, quite a few interesting battles happen in this episode. We have, of course, and this is one of my favorite things, but Alaric showed up in this, so we got a cool crossover there. Once again, he's the most immortal human of any characters in anything. Gets knocked out of his car for a split second. He doesn't even get knocked out. He just stops and gets out, and then of course, he knows that some issues are afoot. But he packs the truck full of C4, blows it up. Gets injured a little bit because he does get smacked away when she hits him. So, he still ends up surviving. It's nothing as crazy as we've seen if you, of course, watch the Vampire Diaries, but it was still cool to see him. He does reference the school at the end of the episode, so I thought that was actually pretty cool. They got a nice little reference to the end of the Vampire Diaries series, so I enjoyed that. But yeah, a small little role in this, and it was definitely cool just to see his character show up. But we have Marcel and Elijah teaming up in this episode, which was definitely a bit of an issue for the two of them, with Elijah kind of going, especially with the way things have kind of kicked off this season. Elijah's the one who's kind of going nuts, really, like Klaus normally does. It's Elijah this season for sure, and they always have that moment where they kind of switch back and forth. And I thought it would maybe be that one episode when they had the party, because he killed the guy and Klaus was the one that let the people go. I was like, okay, they had that moment in that episode, but ever since then, it's been all Elijah kind of going crazy, where it's like, I will fight Marcel to the death every single time I see him, pretty much, if that's, what it needs to be. So he keeps pushing it, but ultimately they just have, a conversation back and forth, like, maybe we should keep the bones separated because that's a better tactic. Turns out that's even better than they could have imagined, because we find out that if the four bones end up coming together, that's what will basically break the spell and allow for the Hollow to physically come back to life as well. So not only from a tactical point, but just from the fact that if the bones are too close, that's what will allow her to come back physically anyway, which that might end up happening. I mentioned that before. Will most likely, whenever anything ends up being like just some orbs or some floaty thing, there's always going to end up being an actor or something like that. And we see the person, so I assume that it's going to be the person that was killed. Like, she was murdered in this episode in the flashback. They put her bones back together, or maybe the acolytes end up helping out now that she's taken over the other woman, the vampire. So I'm assuming that we will see this actress come back to life physically, and then that will allow for them to have like a bit of a loophole, because the big thing is that there is no way to officially destroy the Hollow unless you make an immortal based sacrifice. So Davina comes in. Very cool to see her. I mentioned I was excited that she was coming back in this episode. She was throughout the entire episode, which was really good. One of the big things that they kind of brushed over, they referenced it, so I'm sure we'll get some explanation towards like the middle or end of the season. But it was really early on when she first reveals herself to Haley and Klaus. And Klaus is kind of talking it up and crap. And he's like, it's really interesting that you're here, because you were supposed to be torn to shreds, but here you are, you're totally fine. And of course that was 5 years ago. And then right after he says that, Davina's just like, look, if you want to defeat the Hollow, we have to do this. And I was like, they brushed right over it, but that's definitely something that's going to come up later. So I'm excited to get the answer to that, because it's not like it's been 5 months and she just managed to survive, all these ancestors coming after her. It's been 5 years. So they chose not to attack her after some random amount of time. So there's a story there that they haven't, decided to tell us just yet. But I was like, that was a cool way to reference it, because he brought it up. I was like, how are you still here if the ancestors totally hated you? Because that was the first thing as soon as she went, basically as soon as she died, the first thing was like, well, they're gonna they're gonna tear me apart. I won't be able to live in the afterlife peacefully. They're gonna like rip me to shreds and hunt me down. And 5 years later, she's totally fine. She's still here. So that's a big question that they need to answer. But I was glad that they at least threw kind of that little reference in there, and then she of course just ignores it. So that's a little tease for something that will be explained, a bit down the line. But based off of how much she was in this episode, it kind of gives me hope that she might actually be brought back to life. I thought she was going to show up for maybe like a scene, and I'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then, there would still be that hope that maybe since she was in like one episode, like a part of an episode, she could be brought back later. But she was like the driving force throughout this entire thing until, the Hollow attacked Alaric and then eventually went to Marcel and Elijah. So it was like, she was in it a lot more than I thought she would be. And she's even at the end, after everything's all said and done, she's able to just calmly go to her, gravesite as Marcel is kind of explaining how he felt like there is another way, and he hopes that, excuse me, that she doesn't actually hate him. So she had a lot of freedom to just go around and talk with the Harvest Girls and everything like that. So I'm like, all right, well, she's got to. I mean, she doesn't necessarily have to come back to life, but it'll be cool. I think that'll be nice. So I don't know. They put a lot of hope in that idea. Excuse me, for me. Sorry, I keep coughing. But they put a lot of hope in that idea for me. So we'll see, exactly where that goes. But I really enjoyed her part, and she's, kind of telling half truths and stuff like that, where she's like, I need Klaus here, and I need you because Haley, your blood is the only thing. Your blood or Hope's blood. Those are the only things that can actually stop the Hollow. So you go take her down. I will basically channel Klaus's powers, and then that's how we'll trap her. And that ends up being a total lie because Haley goes in, she comes her hand and just does like the little, stabbing thing. Is like, hurts, doesn't it? And then she gets put down because the Hollow's like, oh, it sucks, but somebody only told you a part of what's supposed to happen here because somebody really, really powerful needs to die in order for me to permanently be trapped. And that's where the whole thing comes in with Davina actually using Klaus. So I thought that was a great way to do it. Hope comes in using a ton of power once again to actually save her father, and she just like banishes Davina away, like just erases her power. So that was a great sequence. But everything in this episode I thought was pretty well done. Like I said, the backstory I thought was really great. Just a little added notch that we get to see who truly formed the werewolf curse. So I thought that was just really cool. We have the constant rivalry between Marcel and Elijah and that back and forth. And it even plays a part in the end of the episode where Elijah is willing to sacrifice himself in order to, save his brother because he's so worried that, Hope needs her father. But Haley's like, well, I need you. So I like the way that that dynamic played out. And she's like, if you want to start making things up to me, then give this weapon to Marcel. Like, let's end this because we are truly trying to do all this together. Because even Marcel at the end, and that's what really made me love that sequence, is that even though, like, this is the guy, and, they talk about it when he, talks with Hope, even though this guy, this whole family did the craziest things to these characters, he's like, you can't kill him. Like, we have to find some other way to do it. And he was, trying to talk Davina down to stop him from killing Klaus. And it was just like, I love the way they did the dynamic in this episode. So Haley totally saw that and was like, look, this is the final straw. He helped my daughter, and he was trying to help Klaus. We need to just end any sort of rivalries we have with him. So he's going to be, well, he was supposed to get the knife at the end of the episode. He might still end up getting it if he happens to go back to his house. But the way they ended this episode was very interesting, where Elijah goes in and, something weird is happening, and so he has the blade on him, and he gets hit right in the back by the Hollow with the thorn bush spike. And I guess it's a slow death sort of thing. I was very surprised by that. I thought it was just going to be like, he's dead, and that's how they end the episode. But I guess it's a weird, slow sort of curse type deal, so we have to wait and see how that plays out. But a very great way to end the episode leading into the next one, because it certainly seems like it's going to be a nice game of kind of like cat and mouse a little bit, and they have to, get the bones and decide, do they give her the bones? Do they, how else can they, save Elijah? So certainly looking forward to the next episode. But of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this one. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, least favorite parts. And of course, with the way they ended things, I would love to know your theories on how in the world they're going to end up saving Elijah, because at this point, there's no answer, but it's TV, so they can always find a brand new answer, save him, and still manage to hold off her getting to like full power by the end of the next episode. But we've seen the actress in this one. It wouldn't be too crazy to me if they saved him by truly giving up the bones, and so we get to see the actress come back in her original physical form, and he does end up living because she honors the deal. So honestly, that's kind of my theory, just because at some point, she's going to be brought back, and I feel like, unless they come up with some new answer just to hold it off a little bit longer, and it is early on, so I wouldn't be that surprised, but I would love to see if, like, the main villain was at full power this early in the season, and they were just trying to survive until, like, the end, and they found some new answers later. I would love that. I think that would actually be very cool, but Vincent shows up next week, and we see some other characters kind of come back into the fold, so I'm excited for it, but like I said, we'd love to know your theories on how they're going to end up saving Elijah. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.